meeting schedule, locations, and topics. So at this time, I'd like to open the floor for public comment. Any individuals wishing to address the group today, now is your time. There will be a limit of 3 minutes for those wanting to talk. So is there anyone hoping to give public comment today?
We didn't receive any written public comment.
Oh, excellent. Thanks so much, Sydney. All right, so Todd, I'll just hand it over to you then, if you can carry us through.
Sure, thank you. I'll go ahead and share what we had promised to bring back to you in terms of this first item, which is around the WTDB agreements. As you might recall, when we were at Portland General Electric, and thank you, Anne, again, for hosting that work session back in January, one of the things that I shared that was happening on the WTDB was that we were in the process of taking a look at the development of agreements or sort of standing principles by which the WTDB would carry out its business. These agreements are sort of about how we show up and how we conduct meetings and partner and interact with each other as members. I think also it's worth noting that the agreements were sort of inspired by work that Portland General Electric and Anne and Brooke Brownlee are leading in their Clean Energy Workforce Coalition sort of consortia work, where they have similar process and protocol. I think they call them principles. And one of the things that I've witnessed as a part of that group is, they anchor to them at the beginning of every meeting and refer to them often. So it's sort of in the, minds of folks as business is conducted. So there's the reminder. And then Sydney, would you like me to show the agreements that the executive committee meeting put together in our last meeting this month, or do you want to pull them up?
Oh, I'll pull them up for you. One sec.
Okay, thank you so much. There they are. Thank you so much, Sydney. Can everybody see those? Great. So a little bit more context. After the board, the executive committee determined that we wanted to do this work, I think 3 of us volunteered to sort of split off and have a small work group. So thanks to Sherry Dunn and Chelsea Watson of the WTDB and myself as staff, we got together and sort of brainstormed. I must admit, in full disclosure, that Sherry is quite proficient in the use of ChatGPT. So I guess we would then say there was a 4th entity involved in the development of these. But I think it ended up in creating a better product for us on the WTDB, and potentially for you all, if you're amenable to sort of adopt this as a way of sort of conducting and doing business together here on the KIC. So not surprisingly, we went with, could you scroll back, I guess, up so we could see the beginning there? Okay, thank you. So this, not surprisingly, I was going to say, there was interested in using the acronym of the WTDB to sort of anchor the agreements and really call out what the work of the Workforce and Talent Development Board is in terms of addressing Oregon's workforce challenges and effectively sort of fostering change through measurable outcomes and alignment. And so as you can see, as Sydney scrolls down, we've got the W, the T, the D, and the B as sort of organizational categories. So the first one that is the W, back up just a bit, is about working collaboratively. So a willingness to collaborate, an opportunity for wisdom sharing in the way we interact and share information with one another, and then a focus on engagement and participation. I'm not going to read all these, but I'll just try to hit the bullets here. The next one under T is about transparency and trust, and how important it is to be transparent in our actions and our decision making. Is about trust building and treating one another with respect and civility. So third, on the D, we talk about this a lot. We've talked a lot about this in the KIC, at the state board level, in other committees and task forces of the WTDB, as well as in exec, about the importance of better decision making with data to back it. So not surprising, it found its way into the agreements, and the importance of using data, being dedicated to focusing on outcomes and goals, and being accountable, not only as a entity, but also as a member of the WTDB and potentially the KIC here, and the importance of the roles and responsibilities, and being trying to be effective and bring credibility to the work. Last and not least, also tied back to the WTDB strategic plan around being bold and innovative. For the B, we called out three sort of key chunks here around boldness in vision and action. And in the spirit of continuous improvement, thanks to some creativity from one of our board members, and to stay in alignment with the B, we entitled it Betterment, but it is all about continuous improvement and seeking ways to learn, adapt, and enhance the work that we do in terms of strategies and outcomes in our space. And then last, around beneficial innovations that have an attempt to have clear benefits for Oregon's workforce and partners. So that's sort of it in a nutshell. I don't know if Andrew, you had anything that you wanted to add, or Kaylin, give you that space to share anything. And then after that, Kaylin, if everybody's amenable, you could go ahead and offer up a motion to approve and adopt the agreements.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry,
Yeah.
we don't have quorum yet, so we can't vote on it.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, my bad. And so since we don't have it, we can table it until at which point we do have quorum. And if not, again, we could hold a separate meeting.
Andrew, anything to add? No? Okay.
No, that's good.
How about the floor? Any thoughts or opinions on it? I love the WTDB. I think the little bullet points are attainable, which is really important, that the things that we're putting out there can be accomplished. Thought it was clever too. So
I thought it was really well laid out. I like the tone. I really like, especially like the action and bold action.
me too, bold and innovative. I thought that was really great. All right. Thank you so much, Todd, for the effort that you guys put in putting that together. So
Just to
all right.
clarify,
Paul.
I'm a little bit unsure what to make of the intention to have a separate meeting to vote on it. Like, what are we voting on? That we like it? I don't understand how that affects our work.
Sorry, thanks. I think what we had discussed at PGE, Paul, I appreciate the question for the clarity, was that it could potentially be a sort of body of work that the WTDB and the executive committee in particular was sort of taking on, that you all as KIC members could adopt and approve as it relates to the KIC. if you chose to. So really, it was just a strategic opportunity that I think I brought up in particular that made sense for you all to see, and one that really resonated and was seen as beneficial and sort of a value add for the executive committee. Does that help?
Yep.
Okay.
Alignment, one voice, making sure that we're all on the same page, moving together collaboratively too, I think is really key. Thanks, Paul, for the question. All right, well, let's jump into review 2024 KIC assessment RFP.
I'll go ahead and toss that over to Andrew.
Okay, Sydney, you want to share it and I can just briefly walk people through? Is that possible?
Yep, just give me 1 second to pull it up.
Okay. Well, I'll fill folks in with another sort of cool story I got today. Travis Stovall, who's on our board, Paul, Vice Chair, and Mayor of Gresham, got contacted by the White House, and we're sort of in the running to include some pre-apprenticeship information in the State of the Union address. So
Wow, that's awesome.
fingers crossed that happens. Yeah, because it'll really highlight Oregon. It would be kind of pretty awesome. But you know, Travis is moving on up on us, Paul. I don't know what to getting contacted by the White House. So that aside, I too want to thank you and again for that great conversation and the opportunity to have it at PGE. I thought it was really a great discussion. It was helpful to me and to Todd, and I think to all the whole team. So again, thank you very much. So given all that conversation, we were like, oh man, how do we incorporate that into both sort of our work moving forward and also expectations for what we are getting out of our assessments? Because I thought there was a lot of really good feedback provided by the committee. So you all have seen this document in the past, I'm pretty sure, or a version of this. And just so, you know, sort of get us up to speed, we've done 2 prior assessments. These assessments every even numbered year are sort of our raison d'etre as the CIC. So every 2 years, the CIC is required to go out and have an assessment of the public workforce system to be delivered through the WTDB to the governor and the state legislature by the end of the year. So our year is fast closing. You know, we're approaching the second quarter of the year, so we need to get moving on this. But we wanted to try and incorporate some of the things that we heard. So we elaborated a bit on the background information. You'll see some discussion there about our intention to align all of the systems, to use data to do that. You'll see an acknowledgement of demographic and geographic differences across the state and making sure that we're accommodating those differences in the assessment process and into the recommendations that we hope to derive from this assessment. So we tried to add a little bit there, and Todd actually did an awesome job of writing this like manifesto of everything that we heard. And I was like, when I was looking at what the governance assessment identified, which starts on the bottom of this first page, Cindy, if you scroll down. So the things in italics, when I started to read those, and I think both Todd and I were reading through those, and it's like, these are pretty reflective of what you all said as being issues around the system that we needed more clarity on, that we needed to be addressed. So you'll notice things in there like a siloed approach to service provision. You'll see obstacles for gathering, good data. You'll mismatch between how things actually work and what people envision the system to do. So I think as we were reading through those, it's like, these are pretty reflective of a lot of the insights that were shared during that conversation. And so part of our recommendation today is to really retain the focus on these identified assessments and findings, get your feedback to make sure that they're reflective of some of the things that you heard us talk about. And the other challenge for us here is really we have to be careful about asking someone to do so much that they can't figure out what we want, and that whatever we get doesn't become actionable. Because I think the real goal here, and as we talk to the governor's office, and as I think we've talked together, it's like, we need to land in a place where we can offer the governor and the legislature very clear, actionable recommendations that they can choose to take action on or not. But as a committee, our responsibility is to provide them with clarity that we think they should consider and make a decision one way or another. I think we can encourage them to make that, but at the end of the day, as we discussed, this is really the governor's world to manage in partnership with the legislature. And our job really is to help inform how we think changes could improve services to Oregonians and to businesses across the state. So I think we tried to maintain that focus in this document. And you'll see on the purpose, something that we heard loud and clear, and we wanted to re-emphasize on the purpose is like, we want to build on those prior assessments. We don't want to recreate that work. We want you to use that work to inform these next steps. So we're really requiring those contractors to dig into those prior assessments and make sure that they're building on those. And then again, actionable recommendations. What can we provide to the governor that the governor can choose to implement or not, but they need to be actionable. And we want to get that out of this. And then finally, the ultimate goal here is to really improve and enhance the efficiency, the effectiveness, and the impact of the WorkSource Oregon system. And I think that's been our collective charge all along. And so I think you'll see that reflected in this scope. And other than that, those first couple pages, nothing else really changed from what we had provided before. There's a lot of boilerplate in here and how people do it. But just to, and I will shut up, I promise, after I do this, because I'm sure people have. So here we are in sort of the end of February. Best case scenario, we're able to issue this, say, mid-March. I think, and Todd, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's probably a minimum of 30 days that this has to be open for respondents to consider. So that takes us to mid-April. If we review and select as a committee sometime in May, that would be great. And best case scenario, and I saw Julia on the phone call too, it's like best case scenario, we have a contract good to go in June, which effectively gives this contractor, or whoever we select, about 6 months of time to do the work, because it's going to have to come back to us no later than November to allow us to review it, to package it in a way that's acceptable to the Workforce Talent Development Board, and then ultimately for them to approve it and send it along to the governor by the close of the year in December. So the timeline is tight. I mean, I think we have a little bit of wiggle room. We might think of some alternative ways to procure this outside of the state system if needed. But if we stick on the state's system, it's going to take a couple months minimally to get it out on the street and award it down the line. So I'll be quiet and happy to answer any questions that folks have. But I think what we want to get out of this is review and approval by you all eventually. I think we're going to have to pursue this by email or whatever the way we have to do that, Todd. but we just need to get review and approval. Oh, by the way, this was sent to Marin and Jan over at the Racial Justice Council because we want to make sure that we are in sync with them and that they're confident in the process and in the product that we're going to get at the end of the day. So happy to answer any questions.
What was their feedback, Andrew?
Pardon me?
What was the feedback from?
Oh, we
the
haven't heard yet.
Justice? Okay,
But we could certainly, that's a good point. I mean, I think we should definitely, if we get some specific changes or recommendations, we should definitely share it with this group and make sure everyone's cool with incorporating whatever that might be.
I would just add preliminarily, Kaylin, I think that Marin was good with what he saw initially. But to Andrew's point, we have not heard anything back in detail, but I don't anticipate that we will hear anything sort of on the negative side at all. He seemed pretty positive about it. And I might also add, after we sent out last week sort of the agenda packet with the draft RFP, we did not receive, Kaylin, any comments from any of the KIC members or concerns, just FYI. I might also underscore a little bit more that we did want to make sure that we honored everything that partners and KIC members brought up at the work session in January at PGE. So as I highlighted in the email that went out, we did include some links that are available and we're there to sort of honor you all and the work that you did that would then also be available to those folks who bid and put applications in for the RFP to see that work. So just wanted to highlight that.
I thought the way you guys
This is,
distilled.
Debbie Ray.
Sorry, go ahead, Debbie.
Yeah, the question I have is more about, so we did the assessment. I'm just trying to get it in my head. And then we discussed that and we kind of brainstormed some. When it comes to the RFP for some other contractor to come back to us, are they gonna come back with the specific actionable items, and will we have a chance to I guess brainstorm with them or to hear some of the things they're suggesting, and will they be looking at those other states and other places for ideas that have worked?
Yeah, absolutely, Debbie. I mean, I think that's really the work of the committee moving forward. At least the sort of primary work of the committee is to engage with the contractor all along the way to make sure that they're incorporating concerns of the committee, that they're hearing specifics from you all that either you want them to dive deeper into, or, you know, even if it's a process change or something like that. So I really think that, you know, this is really going to sort of set our agenda, or a lot of our agenda moving forward, because I think we're going to want to make sure that there's touch points all along the way between the committee and the contractor. Because I think something that's really clear here is you all got to be able to feel comfortable that you're driving this and that your questions are being reflected in the work that the contractor is doing. So they're working for you all. So we need to set up the agenda so that you have FaceTime with them all along the way so that you can help inform the outcome.
Would there be an opportunity along the way to bring in the local workforce boards and the members of those boards into some kind of brainstorming session from, you know, people that are other than just us?
Todd and Kaylin were nodding. Yes, and I think you all can bring in anyone you want to inform the process and make sure that you're getting the kind of input that you need to feel comfortable with the product.
Well, I think that's really good, Andrew. And part of the reason I was shaking my head, I'm maybe getting a little ahead of us, and I don't want to steal your thunder because I think you were going to cover this off. But one of the other things that Andrew and I had as next steps from the PGE meeting, in addition to coming back with agreements, coming back with the RFP, and the slight tweak to the charter that we talked about in broadening our scope potentially, was to plan ahead for the rest of 2024. As you might recall, we talked about, thinking about what the next several months looked like in terms of when we would have meetings around the RFP development and discussion, where we would have them. It was brought up at PGE that it would be nice to try to, meet in different areas around the state to get a flavor for what was happening at the local level with partners, local boards, et cetera. And also to sort of carve out potential topics. Obviously, upfront, it's going to be loaded with the RFP work. As we sort of roll off of that, what does that look like in terms of potential topics, tours to better understand dynamics within the system, continuous improvement efforts that may already be underway, and potentials that, emerge from the work that we do in the development of the RFP as that evolves. And then also trying to think of it in a way that is efficient and doesn't add to the meaningfulness of life. So I'll stop there because I think Andrew's going to talk a little bit more about that as we get there. Sorry, Andrew, I probably said a little bit too much. I know that you've been sort of leading some efforts in your space as it relates to that. So.
Well, I guess we'll start with, is there any, take a couple days, spend a little time with the document if you have it, I think, and send any questions or concerns or comments you have to Todd and I. And then if we could get that buttoned up within the next week or so, I think that would then put us in a really good position to get it out right away, get it approved by, the full kick. But by all means, if you feel like you want to spend a little time with it before making a decision. But again, the timeline is kind of rolling here. So if we can get specific comments, please let us know within the next few days, and then we could get it out. And if we could do that, I think we'll be in good shape to get something back mid-March, or get something out mid-March, back by mid-April, and on that timeline.
And I might just add, I meant to say this earlier, Andrew, to piggyback on what you said in terms of the timeline. I think we can work with, I know our procurement department is incredibly busy, but I know this is important work to them as well. So I think we can work with them to see if there is possibly any opportunity to try and prioritize this a bit, to see if we can sort of get back on schedule a little bit, since we are a bit behind.
Awesome. So yeah, in terms of building out the calendar, I do think, at least in my mind, I think the priority for the committee has to be engagement with this assessment and really, focusing on making sure that you're getting what you need out of this process to feel confident to move those recommendations or whatever we get out of that to the WTDB and to the governor and the legislature. So, I think, again, that's sort of why we're here legislatively. I think what Todd and I both heard also was a desire, though, to know more about the system, to figure out ways that the committee could engage in different ways. So one thing that we, thought about was, well, could we move meetings around the state, and that kind of stuff to see if people were interested. And so one thing that I thought about is, you know, all boards across the state, local workforce development boards have meeting schedules. So the Oregon Workforce Partnership agreed to develop a calendar function on their site, which will advertise all of the local board meetings across the state. So one thing that we could do is if people were particularly interested in attending a local board meeting that's not in your area or one that you don't typically attend, here's a mechanism that we can make that available to you all as CIC members. And also, you know, you could see from the agenda, well, what are people talking about in other parts of the state? And, you know, Paul has a huge interest in youth services or whatever, and, you know, the Eastern Web's talking about youth. It's an opportunity to just go in and either observe, or I have certainly given the heads up to my colleagues that, you know, CICA is playing an important role here. We could even get you on an agenda if you wanted to do that. But it was just a thought of a way to make other engagement opportunities easier to access and available. And so as soon as that, I mean, the section on the site is built. What I gotta do is get everyone to populate it. My stuff's on there, but I'm working on other people. And as soon as it's populated, I will email it to Sydney and she can share it with everyone on the committee. And Todd, I know you had some other ideas, but I thought that was one way we could engage with local areas.
Yeah, that's great. I like it a lot, as we've chatted. The other thing, just to underscore, I don't necessarily think we need to show it, but we could. I took a stab while Andrew was off working hard in Hawaii at putting together what we promised you, which was a sort of table calendar for the months as we move forward through the rest of the calendar year. I took a stab at just basically putting something together for Andrew and his colleagues in particular to react to. So we did actually say, okay, hey, I don't remember exactly, but just to convey a little bit more, in March, we'll meet at Clackamas Workforce Partnership and potentially take a tour around the Workforce Oregon Center or another, component of the work that Bridget Daisy and her group does there, maybe in conjunction with the Oregon City Workforce Oregon Center, to give you a flavor of what the work looks like more on the ground, to really, begin to, if you're new to it, better understand it. And if you know about it, to, learn some new nuggets, hopefully. And at the same time, have a kick meeting and invite other partners around, kind of Debbie, to your point. So we did that for every month, gave something for Andrew to sort of noodle on, and as he said, connect with his colleagues. So that is in play. I guess maybe we thought we could pull that together a little faster, but I think after more conversation and a little bit more thoughtful review, we realized that coordinating all that is going to take a little bit of time to do it in a sort of thoughtful, efficient, and effective way. So I would just add that. I don't know if there's any questions about that. We just wanted to make sure we followed through with that as it was on our next steps.
Yeah, this is Debbie. Again, I'm wondering, I think there'd be a lot of interest, at least over here in my region, from employers to have some involvement with this. And I was wondering if it would be okay or work out if, even if we had like a satellite meeting in this Northeast Oregon and then one, anywhere else they wanted to do it, but that the local workforce board could facilitate, but then the entire, this group of people could zoom in. So they don't have to travel all the way to Pendleton, Oregon, right? But could be part of listening in if there was a facilitator that brought employers particularly together. I think it would showcase that we're working hard, but we are encouraging employers to engage, and my recommendation.
I love that idea, Debbie. I think that's a great way to really elevate our workforce boards, collaborating with the businesses, hopefully the Chamber of Commerce, bringing people together, and then us showing up to really listen and learn from them. Great idea, Debbie.
And Debbie, I think Andrew and I were kind of channeling you. If I recall, correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, but I think we put on there as potential sort of host locations, Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla, sort of honoring what Susie Calhoun raised up in terms of rural Oregon and making sure that we did raise that up. And I believe I took the liberty of suggesting, at least in the draft calendar I shared with Andrew, a potential meeting at Boardman Foods with a tour potentially, Debbie. So I like what you said a lot about the local boards, the local business community, and thanks for adding on the chamber, Kaylin.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that are interested that just don't go to meetings and aren't connected to the local workforce. So this would be
Yeah, Debbie, you just cut out a little bit there at the end. I think you might be driving and on the road.
oh, okay. Okay, can you hear me now? It
We
would be
can.
even if there was 3 or 4 particular questions, that we're kind of wanting feedback on, and it was like no more than a couple hours. I think that would show a lot of excitement over what we're doing and gratefulness.
Any additional thoughts or comments from the floor?
I love the idea of connecting to different workforce boards. That'd be super helpful at all different levels.
You bet, Brent. Okay, Andrew and Todd, should we just stay tuned? When do you anticipate to send out this draft calendar so folks can start planning accordingly?
Great question, Andrew. Do you have a sense of when you'll hear back from your colleagues in terms of dates and alignment with existing meetings?
No, I sent an update yesterday, so I can check again. I would say within the next couple of days, it should be updated. It's, most of the meetings are quarterly. At least the big board meetings. So yeah, I think within the next couple of days, we should have at least a link to share. People can go and check out the dates.
And then maybe you and I can work, if we had something to bring back, Kaylin, within the next 2 to 3 weeks for people to react to, would that be doable, Andrew, do you think? In terms of a sort of a draft calendar idea, or will they be able to see that when they go to the link, or they're just going to see the local board meetings, right?
Yeah, so I mean, I think what you'll see initially is just the dates of those meetings, and then as they get closer, you'll see an agenda associated with that meeting. I don't know. Maybe we should noodle on this a bit more, Todd. And
yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll stay tuned while you guys noodle. One thing I think would be helpful is for whoever is, taking on this RFP to have those dates, because it's going to be really important that they go and they're part of this experience, building that trust with these workforce boards, and then, and with us as well. So I think, time feels like the essence a little bit to me, getting this RFP out, kind of planning for the year ahead. So if I can support you guys in any of that, we want this to be a successful experience. And I think having, moving forward with initiatives is going to be key. So, all right. One question I had, Todd, is when should we anticipate as a board to connect again to vote on the RFP?
A great question. Thank you. I'll work with Sydney to send out a doodle. It'll be, as I said earlier, a quick meeting. I think no longer than 10 minutes at the most. And we'll just tune in via Teams. You can toss out a motion and then vote to approve those items that we have listed. I don't know that I can review if you'd like, Kaylin, the changed language on the charter before we close today. And then when we do meet, after Sydney's able to, through a doodle poll, figure out what'll work for everyone, we can just tee it up so that we offer up a motion for the agreements, offer up a motion for the RFP, and finalize it with an motion on the tweak to the charter.
That sounds good to me. How about you, Brent, Paul, Anne? What do you guys think? Yeah? Okay. All right, Todd, if you can jump into those revised charter, that'd be great.
Okay, great. Sydney, could you pull that up real quick? Thank you so much.
Sorry, I lost it. I'm looking for it.
No, it's okay. I had it. Great. So this is, I think, the last of those items that we promised we'd come back with when we had the discussion at PGE that day during our work session. We talked about the opportunity. I think this was offered up by some of our members that in addition to the focus that we have per the legislation that created the KIC, and required, as Andrew said earlier, the biennial assessment as it relates to WorkSource Oregon and continuous improvement. We wanted to provide space for potential other opportunities and issues that resonated with KIC members in terms of continuous improvement across the system. So I took a stab at making those changes. So if you could, Sydney, scroll down to the yellow highlights. That's the new language there. So in the previous one, it had not been updated since, I think, right around the time the legislation, maybe a bit before the legislation passed. So I basically made the first sentence change there all about just the date. So the final recommendations will be submitted to the governor by the state board no later than December 15th, which is the date that is called out in the legislation. The second change is more about what I just explained in terms of the broadening of the scope. At the discretion of the co-chairs, committee members, and the WTDB chair, the scope of the committee's work can be expanded. For example, if a certain program, initiative, or effort requires an evaluation or other effort, that evaluation can be provided to the committee for review and subsequent action. So that's what I added. I just realized as I say that that we could add, sort of a broader caveat right after that evaluation or other information could be provided to the committee to review for subsequent actions. I reviewed the rest of the charter. I don't think additional changes based on that discussion that we had in our work session in January were warranted. So I guess those would be the two recommended that we would then bring back for that noon vote meeting we talked about. Any questions, concerns, comments?
Sorry, I can share again if you want me to.
I think we're good. Thank you, Sydney, so much for your help.
All right. Thanks, Sydney. Really do appreciate all you do. Okay, that's it for the agenda. Todd and Andrew, is there anything else that you wanted to add? No?
Just thank you all very much for coming today, and thank you so much for volunteering your time to help us in the efforts around continuous improvement, particularly of the public workforce system, but even more broadly. So thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for answering the doodle poll that will be coming out and for attending the meeting so that we can vote and help these guys really move this forward so that Oregon can continue to be a strong state. Anything for the good of the order? All right, it is 3:50 p.m. We will adjourn the meeting. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a good